This is Harsh Rules. I'm Ben Harsh, and today we're going to learn how to play the expansion to the Dune game, the Duel. Here's a quick inventory of the components inside the Duel's box. Alright, get your bits together. It's time to set up the Duel. Step 1, you're going to add the new cards to the Treachery deck. Let's look at some of the new Treachery cards. First up, we have the Cone of Silence. This prevents players from buying cards, declaring Kanly, or forming an alliance. Does not work on any of your allies, though. Next, we have a new poison weapon, the Alaka Drug, and another poison defense snooper card, as well as a new worthless bluff card called the Kul Wahad. Finally, the most complex new Treachery card is the Residual Poison card, and it gets its own slide. You play this card by putting it face down in front of a potential victim's shield. You inform that player that they've now just been poisoned and they need to pay you 1 to 4 spice per turn to stay alive. If they refuse, the card gives you the ability to kill off a leader of your choice. So basically, we've just added an extortion element to the Dune game. Think of all the life skills we learned as children playing this. But it gets better. Because this is Dune, you can also bluff. So you could totally mess with somebody's head by putting out a bluff card face down and claiming it's a residual poison card. If the potential victim calls your bluff and you're not able to get away with the card, then you're caught and you need to pay 3 times the amount you tried to extort from the player. And Dune players wonder why they have no friends. Anyway, back to setup. Step 2, you're going to place the Duel game board next to the regular playing area. Next, you're going to shuffle the deck of Duel cards and deal out 1 card to every player. Please note these cards cannot be traded and they must be kept secret. After that, place the remaining Duel deck on the Duel game board. Then you're going to place the block tokens, there are 6 of them, on the Duel game board. The Duel expansion also gives you main leader discs. Each main leader has an attack power of 10, so they're very powerful, but if they're killed in battle, then the game is over, so keep that in mind. Go ahead and place them on the board behind your player shields, like this. Now, let's look at the etiquette of Kanly. Kanly etiquette. A player may threaten Kanly on 1 player per turn. They cannot threaten Kanly on an ally, and the threat must be conditional and last only 1 turn. The Kanly conditions must be binary. Therefore, I threaten Kanly if the Atreides enter Arrakeen. If the Atreides enter Arrakeen, the conditions are met and Kanly occurs, and if they don't enter Arrakeen, then the conditions are not met and Kanly does not occur. And when that condition is met, the accuser must declare aloud, Kanly. The dispute is then resolved by a Kanly duel. Kanly duels are fought with directional-based attack and defense cards. It's important to note that a defense card does damage as well with poison. Now let's look at these card actions in relation to the arena. Inward movement means you're moving towards the center of the arena. Every time you make an inward movement, you get an extra duel card, which is very helpful. If you have and are able to play the attack in card, then you're attacking in, and the only defense is a defense out card. The arena also has little markers on each of the spaces that show you the directions you're attacking, whether it's in, out, left, or right. The inverse of an inward movement, of course, is an outward movement. So now you're moving out towards the rim of the arena. And if you play an attack out card, the only defense is a defend in card. If you move right, you're moving counterclockwise around the ring that you inhabit. If a player plays an attack right card, then the player on the left who's getting attacked needs to play the defend left card to block it. If you move left, you're moving clockwise around the ring you inhabit. If a player plays an attack left card, then the defender must play an defend right card. Here's a quick review with all the movements together. In a duel, you're all standing around in a circle facing the center of the arena. You can move inward 1 ring, You can move outward to the edge of the ring. From the layer of the ring you're at, you can move left, which is clockwise, or move right, which is counterclockwise. It's kind of a little dance. Another interesting aspect of the arena are the block walls. Block walls can be raised or lowered or even jumped over using block cards. I imagine these as little force fields that raise and lower on each ring level. On the arena board, you use block tokens to mark the walls that are raised. For instance, if I play a place block card and I choose the area, I can raise that block wall. If you play a pick up block card, then the block wall goes down. Finally, if you get the jump block card and play it, you can jump over a wall into the next area of the ring. There are 3 remaining duel cards that can be used. There is the throw knife attack card, which allows you to conduct an attack from any direction up to 2 spaces away. Next, there's the move or attack 3 card, which allows you to take one of your 2 actions and you can attack 3 times or move 3 times, or a combination of move or attack that equals to 3. Finally, and this card cracks me up, there's the Flee Arena with Honor card, which allows a player and their seconds to get out of Kanly alive. I fled with honor. I love that. Okay, now let's put all these elements together and see how the Kanly duel plays out. Here's our little scenario to set the stage. The Fremen player has threatened Kanly against the Atreides player. The condition is if the Atreides player moves a single troop into Arrakeen this turn. So naturally, the Atreides move a single troop into Arrakeen this turn. The Fremen player declares loudly, Kanly, and we initiate the duel. Once the Kanly duel is initiated, there's a lot of secrecy around who will actually be fighting in the duel for each respective family. Each duelist can have seconds from the other factions. Each of the factions must decide which duelist they're going to support. As you'll see in a minute, the stakes for this decision is pretty high, and there's not a lot of clues as to the power of each of the representatives who will be dueling. However, one clue is the spice backing that can be applied to each of the duelists from their faction. Each faction may support their duelist with up to 10 spice that are placed down in front of the player shield. In this example, the Fremen backs their champion with 2 and the Atreides backs theirs with 5. I've built this visual representation to help me teach you how to play the duel. On the left is the Atreides duelist, and on the right is the Fremen duelist, and the potential seconds are lined up the center. Now, I talked about high stakes, and this is what I mean. If the duelist you support as a second wins, then you get fabulous prizes, and I'll go over those in a second. But if you lose, then your leader that you put in the box as a supporter goes to the tanks. Now, here's how the attack mechanic works. Here we have Aaliyah from the Bene Gesserit, and she has an attack power of 5. Because the Bene Gesserit have put up Aaliyah with an attack power of 5, they have 5 as the number that they can use for their prize. So they can choose to get 5 spice, they can choose to revive 5 army tokens from the Bene Tlaxu tanks, or they can resurrect a leader from the tanks of an equal or lesser value. So each faction must choose their second and who they're going to support carefully. There's great rewards, but then they could also die. So for the record, we now have extortion, gambling, and dueling, 3 great family activities. Just remember, folks, the family that plays together stays together because they can provide testimony in a court of law. So let's see, with limited information and other political intrigues, where these seconds will settle. The Spacing Guild and the Bene Gesserit had decided to support the Atreides, and the Harkonnen and the Emperor's representative had decided to support the Fremen. So let's move the tokens and then see how confident they are in their champions. All the Bene Gesserit leaders have an attack power of 5, so we can't really tell anything there. They're all in wherever they go. The Spacing Guild has sent Esmar Tuick with an attack power 3, which is kind of one of their stronger guys. Or maybe they just think he's a traitor. I don't know. The Harkonnen have sacrificed, sent Uman Kudo with an attack power of 1, and the Emperor has sent Bashar to be his representative with an attack power of 2. I'm not feeling a lot of confidence here. Now here's where I'm probably going to run afoul of the purists. The spice backing mechanic doesn't thematically quite make sense to me, so I like to think of it as being the shield power. Duelists can be backed with up to 10 spice, or in my twisted psyche, the shield can be powered up to 10. This was covered off a little earlier, but it helps to refresh because we're going to be in the thick of it in just a minute. Another key thing to note is that the attack power and the health or hit points are linked. So in this example, Jessica can do a damage of 5, but if she takes a hit and goes down, then her attack power and her health are linked, so they both go down. So she might only be able to do an attack of 3 or less. It depends on the amount of damage she's taken after she's eaten through her entire spice backing. This is why the spice backing feels thematically to me more like a shield. Another quick note is that you can only hold up to 4 duel cards. The Emperor token here is more of a question, because I'm wondering in the back of my mind, since the Emperor can loan spices any time, can he loan spice for the duel? I don't know. Can he? The rules for the duel are only 2 pages long, written in 1984, so they're a little unclear at times, and they don't cover everything. In fact, at one point, the rules got me so confused this weekend that I came up with an entirely different game by accident. And I'll share that with you shortly, but it seemed like it made perfect sense at the time. It deals with the idea that the spice backing, or the shield, obscures the identity. And I'll show you that here in just a second, but let's keep going. Okay, let's get this battle rolling. First, the player who threatened Kanly is going to place their secret leader. Next, the threatened player places their secret leader, and they place it along the outer edge. And 2 of these tokens cannot occupy the same space. Now you've got to remember that these players, the tokens are flipped upside down, so you can't see who they are. So the only person who knows who that token is the player playing them. The seconds don't know, the enemy doesn't know. It's really a big secret. Now the player gets 2 actions per turn. They can move, or they can play a card. Or they can move twice or play a card twice. The Fremen player decides to move inward twice. So because they moved inward, they get a card for each inward move. So they get 2 duel cards. Now it's the Atreides' turn, and the same rules apply. The Atreides player decides to move inward once and pick up a card. They picked up a throw knife card. For the second action, the Atreides player decides to attack with their attack in card. Now whenever a player attacks, their leader is revealed. And in this instance, the Fremen player doesn't have a defend out card, so he ends up taking 5 damage. Because the damage exceeds the amount of spice backing that the Fremen player has, the Fremen player is revealed. And this is where I got confused, so I'll show you the variant rules here in a second. The Atreides player is then going to collect the damage from the Fremen player in spice. Okay, here's the accidental variant I came up with. Like I said, the 1984 rules are like only 2 pages long, and I got confused. I thought the trigger for revealing who the duelist was the spice backing. So the whole time I'm soloing this, I'm thinking, that means that as long as I have spice backing, I can remain invisible to my opponent. I was led to believe this because the rules state that the opponent doesn't appear until his spice backing is gone in the example. But it also states you appear when you attack, so it's confusing. I like this accidental variant better because you can be cloaked from your opponent for quite some time, at least until your spice backing is removed, and then you're revealed. I could choose a weaker leader and then pile a bunch of spice on them to keep them cloaked. Sort of a tactical bluff. One game I actually beat the other duelist without revealing myself, and I thought it would be really cool if it was a real game, that I would then be able to collect my token without ever telling anybody who I was fighting with and just let their heads spin. But I don't think that's the way that Avalon Hill intended it. But if you like it and you want to play with it, it's a gift, it's yours. Alright, back to our regularly scheduled program. Okay, the Atreides player collects the spice from the Fremen player and puts it in their little spoil pile. Really, they can return it to their spice bank, but for now, we're just going to keep it on the side of the board so we can keep track of it. The Atreides player is then going to discard their used duel card and collect a new one for moving one inward from the deck. Now it's the Fremen duelist's turns, and Stilgar decides to move right. Remember, he does not move inward, so he does not get a card. Stilgar's in rough shape, so he decides he's going to place a block. The Fremen places the block and then discards the used card. Now it's Jessica's turn, and she moves left one. She now has line of sight beyond the wall and uses her throw knife card. Stilgar does not have a defend out card, and he's hit by the flying knife. The knife does a damage of 5, and Jessica collects 5 spice, but Stilgar doesn't have 5. So Stilgar dies, and his Fremen seconds along with him. Jessica discards her used throw knife card, and her seconds claim victory. And that's how a Kanly duel works. But there's one more piece of the expansion, the War of the Assassins. A War of Assassins can occur on the second round during a Nexus. Remember, a Nexus occurs when you draw a Shai-Hulud card. Basically, a War of Assassins is triggered if there are no alliances forged during the Nexus period. So if going through the whole Nexus, no one forms an alliance, bam, a War of Assassins happens. I read from one of the other reviewers that if you time a Cone of Silence card just right, you can silence everybody so they can't form an alliance and therefore trigger a War of Assassins. What a jerk move. Another expansion addition to the Nexus conferences is the medieval hostage system it implements. While the rulebook doesn't call it as such, if you read between the lines, that's more or less what it is. In medieval times, families would exchange hostages. This was a political system to prevent warfare and treachery. A powerful family would then more or less behave themselves because they wouldn't want their relative killed. It's a system we should revisit in modern times because there's some relatives I'd love to get rid of. Anyway, this is how it works. At the beginning of the Nexus, each faction will choose a leader disc to place in hostage. The noble idea of the Nexus is for all the factions to get together and resolve their differences and form an alliance. However, if no one can agree on an alliance, then the War of Assassins happens and these hostages are sent to the arena to fight to the death. So to set up the board for the War of Assassins, or a potential War of Assassins, each player will put one of their leader discs face down on the outer rim of the board. The player who plays first in the turn sequence in the regular game chooses the first spot. And then the player placement continues around the board counterclockwise. When you run out of spaces in the outer ring, you start filling in the inner ring. I assume if you're playing with the extra factions from the general magazine, you just keep filling that inner ring. So this could be a big fight. So if no one at the Nexus can agree on an alliance, then these poor people all have to fight to the death. Only one will survive, and they get no spice backing. I'm going to leave it here to allow you to explore the War of Assassins in your own games. The War of Assassins follows the same rules as the Kanly duel, there's just a lot more players involved. So that's how you play the Duel, an expansion for Dune. Full disclosure, I didn't really think much of this expansion when I started this video, but as I played through I start to see some of the possibilities that you could do with this. I think the political aspects that the Duel brings really adds to the Dune game itself. I just find the Duel mechanics sometimes a little clunky. I really like the way they implemented the Kanly and kind of making a statement that's conditional, that either the player does it or doesn't do it and it triggers Kanly. Like in real life blood feuds, a lot of times both sides engineer a way that they can just basically have a duel and settle it. I'm sure there are also plenty of other ways players can manipulate this system to get what they want, whether they're encouraging other people to duel, or they're setting up hostages, or they're supporting the wrong people. It's really interesting. The Duel was published in 1984, and since, it's pretty much one of those holy grail eBay expensive items. There are lots of print and play options out there, so if you're really interested, you could go ahead and print one of those out and give it a shot. Alright, that's all for this episode. I'm Ben Harsh for Harsh Rules, and I'll see you next time.